Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the Marvel fan site that'll have plot synopsis and character bios for this issue. So we're continuing our run of Captain America, and we're looking at 333 from 1987. So I've been doing the Road to Captain America No More. I do have a playlist. And now, last issue, he quit. And so, who will be the new Captain America? So, Mike Zeck and I think Bob McLeod do the cover here, which is pretty cool. So who will be the next? And here's Stan Lee. So we got Nick Fury, we got the Super Patriot, the Falcon. I don't know who everybody here is, but it's leaving it like, is this Tony Stark perhaps? So we'll see here. So the replacement, and so we are pretty much picking up where Captain America left his uniform nice and tidy here. His shield, here's his boots, his gloves, the whole shebang here. Mark Gruenwald is our writer. Tom Morgan, who also did the previous issue, and then Dave Hunt is the inker with Jim Shooter still editor in chief. I don't know how much longer he will be editor in chief, as we are very nearing to the end of his tenure at Marvel. So, Paul Neary is no longer the penciler, as he is going to be oh my god, Alan Davis's inker, I believe in Detective Comics around this time. So Paul Neary is going to ink his buddy Alan Davis. So he's done penciling, and I actually have the Alan Davis Paul Neary run of Detective Comics in my Batman playlist. Feel free to check it out. Also, as I mentioned, I have a Captain America playlist. Feel free to check that out. All right, so we've got a group of unnamed individuals here. Well, this is rather unexpected, one says. The other one, unexpected, it's outrageous. A combat veteran like Captain America refusing to serve his country. And then another one says, just who does this Steve Rogers think he is? Telling us that he can't work for us because he represents the American dream. He represents what we say he represents. And then another one says, we're the U.S. government. We're the boys that gave him that super soldier formula that made him what he is. Who gave him his shield and his uniforms? Who came up with the very name and concept of Captain America? And then another one says, how dare he say no to our directive that we coordinate his official activities? How dare he turn in his shield and uniform? So, sounds like a politician, doesn't it? So, all right. And so, I love how they're all sitting here as if, I don't know. I always find it funny when people, when we are in TV and in comic books and in how we have a representation of all these different organizations, that we always picture them in this larger than life type chairs, similar to, I guess, how a city council perhaps. So maybe it's not far fetched, but I just can't see them sitting in something like this, but maybe they do. So this lady says, might I interject, Mr. Yates, that one, we're not all boys, and two, we're not the government. We're simply a presidentially appointed commission charged with the task of managing America's superhuman resources. And so this is Dr. Valerie Cooper, who will be is she's made some appearances in the X-Men, and then she'll play a very important run in Peter David's first run on X Factor. So, and so this guy here says, "Point taken, Miss Cooper. Now then, the floor is open to suggestions on how do we proceed from here." And that general says, "First, let's court-martial Rogers for failing to live up to his military obligations." And I think this is Peter Garrick, who's a government, I don't know what you would call him, but he's been in a lot of, he's been in the Avengers, he's been on the X-Men, so he represents kind of like, oh, not James Bond, just an agent, I guess. So, anyway, he says, "I'm not sure it's possible, General. Steve Rogers technically is not part of the military rank and file." And then he continues, "But at the very least, we can impose strict sanctions on him and his activities. He may have turned in his shield and uniform, but there is nothing to prevent him from fashioning duplicates. I propose we get a court injunction prohibiting him from calling himself Captain America or wearing any uniform that's red, white, and blue." So this is going to lead to Steve Rogers donning the captain. And this guy here says, "Then we notify the Avengers that unless they terminate Rogers' membership in their group at once, we will prohibit them from operating freely on U.S. soil." And so this guy here then says, "Now, Mr. Garrick, it's our job to coordinate superhuman activities. We can't very well do that if we turn one of the nation's most dependable superhuman teams into outlaws." So I love Henry Peter Garrick, or is it Garrich? I don't know. Anyway, he continues here. "We can use Rogers to bring the Avengers into line, Mr. Mathers. Then they have to know we mean business." So the good old U.S. government here. So, all right, it looks like we have a lot of talking. So I'm going to do my best to see if I can just narrate this so that I don't end up reading all this for the next 40 minutes here. So, Valerie Cooper wants to find a new Captain America more than she wants to punish Steve Rogers. The administration doesn't want the bad publicity if they find out that Steve Rogers left. They have to get a new Captain America immediately and get him out into the public here. So he asks what'll happen if Steve Rogers issues a public statement. She says that's unlikely because he most likely doesn't want to give the administration a black eye for all this. So this guy says to Garrick to impose or to investigate what sanctions they can put on Steve Rogers. And so then he asks the general for possible replacements since he is involved in the recent super soldier projects, and he asks if there are any recruits here. So he's got a couple in his mind. The first one is Nuke, who is in Frank Miller's Daredevil run called Born Again. So I'm serializing also Frank Miller's Daredevil run, but I'm not there yet. So, but he will play a pivotal role in the last couple issues. And then G.I. Max instead of G.I. Joe. He's 40 times stronger than a human, but ended up getting shot. And I have that, as I mentioned, on the playlist here. So, all right. So this guy says Nomad, and this guy says the Falcon, Nick Fury. So they all say a little bit about everybody here. He doesn't think any of them are capable of taking the job, and then this guy's like, "Oh my God, how are we gonna get somebody, and of course, she puts the newspaper with that story about the super patriot. So, which we again covered last issue. So, we now have a television interview, and here's the super patriot. Very look at this sitting in the couch in the chairs there. So she asks, "Hey, how does it feel the superhero of the hour?" He says it feels great. However, he doesn't do it for the glory. He does it because it's the right thing to do. Because to do any less would be to squander his God-given talent. So we all know that's not quite true. However, hey, it is television. And we all know, just like we do in social media and everything, that the truth is always somewhere in the middle, from what the talking heads all tell us. So he says we've all been put here for a reason on this planet, and his is to help the United States. So she says that he's kind of new to this superhero business, and of course, he is. Mark Gruenwald, when he started this story, I don't know whether he knew this would be the end game, but I think at one point he said, "Oh, this would be cool." So he was created specifically for this story, to replace Captain America. So they cover that story that from the previous issue. I've already covered it, so I'm not going to repeat it here. But that's essentially kind of what they are. It's part of that Jim Shooter era where everybody's there's a new reader every month, so let's make sure that they sort of get caught up. So she asks him, "How did you have the guts to do what you did?" And he just says, "I was born with them, I guess." So he says and training basically. So she asks him if he's associated with Captain America. And of course, I'll read this. He says, "No way, ma'am. That fuddy-duddy is America's past. I'm America's future. I think this nation deserves a strong, decisive national hero ready to put his all on the line every single day." So, and then he says, "You didn't see him up there yesterday, did you?" And she says, "No, I did not." So, all right. So this lady here is like, "Wow, we hardly get anybody as powerful as you." And he says, "Thanks, ma'am. You'll have to see that I'm invited back sometime." And so he gets to the back here. And so the guy, I think it's like his agent, he's like, he says he was fabulous, and they got a prominent businessman that'll pay the damages for the monument. And then, of course, the FBI shows up here, and they say a presidential advisor would like to speak with you and to come with them. And this other guy's like, "An advisor, not the president?" The self-importance. And Super Patriot's like, "When my government wants to talk, I'll listen. That's the kind of American I am." And he says, "I should go with you." And the FBI, who looks like they're out of the 50s here, says, "It's just for him." And Super Patriot says, "I'll see you back at the hotel, Ethan. Don't forget to make dinner reservations." So Super Patriot meets Valerie Cooper, and then they sit down to talk business. She wants to know everything about him, and he asks if he's in trouble, and she says no, but I may have the opportunity of a lifetime for him, providing he's the right man for it. So he's wondering why they want to investigate him, but he decides that it is legitimate. So he takes off his mask and says his name is John Walker. His folks were farmers. He had an older brother and a sister. So we're going to basically get his origin, which we have not had at all. He says here his brother Mike is the reason he is what he is. He was a soldier. He was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, but he came back home in a box in the summer of '74. But unfortunately, it was hard to become a hero after the war ended, as showing him um, peeling potatoes. So look at all these potatoes. So he completed his tour, and then the power broker um, offered basically to give him powers. So he signed up. He was gonna join those superpowered wrestlers, but he met Ethan Thurm, who was an agent and kind of turned him into basically the super patriot, the all American hero. So I like the way Tom Morgan draws him much more beefier and bigger, because that is how someone that is like would look like if they were super powerful, the way that the power broker made him. So she shows him the shield and tells her that she doesn't say it's Steve Rogers, just says that the previous person has been stripped of his rank and title. And of course, John Walker says he resigned. Now, why would anyone who says he loves his country do a thing like that? She says they are considering him to become the new Captain America. And so he kind of laughs because he's been a critic of Captain America, um, that he wasn't cutting it as a symbol of the U.S. anymore. And so Valerie Cooper asked him if he's interested in their proposal. He says he put a lot of time and effort into creating the super patriot. Couldn't he just do the job without changing his name and costume? And she says no. Captain America is a tradition that goes back decades. We want to preserve it. Well, and he's like, so. And he says, if Uncle Sam wanted me to be Mickey Mouse, I'd do it. That's the kind of American, the kind you can count on. And she says, when do I start? She says they'll contact him after they do a background check. And I love that Valerie Cooper in the door. Oh, and he's like, me, Captain America. What would Ethan say? And he's like, you, Captain America? Of course, the agent doesn't trust the government. And of course, I am not someone who would trust the government. Right wing or left wing, it matters not. I always keep saying people are in it for themselves. Those with power want power. Those without power want power. So the powerful try to keep it, and the people without power try to take it. So it's always a struggle. So the agent says, I say we wait to hear all their terms and then drive a hard bargain of our own. And Super Patriot says, no can do, Ethan. I already agreed to it. And he's like, you nincompoop. And then he's like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. He looks like an overweight Matt Murdock here. And so he's like, he probably made the smart move. Show him what a swell guy you are. Sell him on you. Then hit him with your demands. All right. What are your non-negotiable demands? So I like this one. Like I said, people, Mark Gruenwald writes this perfectly. He's like, first, that I be put on the federal payroll as your personal manager. $100,000 a year should do nicely. That was back in the 80s. That actually was a lot back in those days. Second, you should get a 1 year release option in case it doesn't work out just right. Third, let's see, great health insurance and benefits. Yeah, you should be insured for $1 million. I'll be your beneficiary. What else? Fourth, I want a big office overlooking Capitol Hill. Fifth, oh yeah, we'll get a piece of all Captain America merchandising, at least 20%. Sixth, we can't forget your pals, the Buckies. Make the feds hire them as your backups. Seventh, hey, where you going? He goes, exercise. I've got to stay in shape now more than ever. Wait, you didn't hear all my... And so, all right. see people just look out for themselves. It is perfect. Um, and so as he goes for a jog, he's like, something tells me Miss Cooper's agency won't go for Ethan's demand. Then what do I do? He's done so much for me. Wonder why the original Cap threw in the towel. Sure, would be nice to know before I get locked into it. So, all right. So as he is running here, he sees a phone booth here, or not a phone booth, but well, maybe it is. It is still a phone booth here. For those of you that are too young, back before cell phones, that is how you got a hold of people. He decides to call the Captain America's hotline and see what is up. So he leaves him a message that he wants to talk to him at the Lincoln Memorial. And so um, he is going to expect Captain America. And so here he is waiting in the memorial. Look at this. No people. That is awesome here. So, all right. And so he is late. You think it's very odd that Captain America didn't show up here. He starts to think maybe he didn't resign. Maybe he died in battle. And then he goes, the government would mislead them. Oh, you poor, poor sap. So he's going to go back to the motel. And suddenly, here comes Captain America and attacks him. And so we all know, look, he's all blue here. Blue not on purpose. I mean, on purpose for the coloring, but they're not wanting to show us too much here. And so you can see John Walker punch him. And suddenly, you can see here, he's not wearing a shirt here. And so he realizes now that there's more of them. And so these were not Captain America here. And it was his Bucky's, his friends here. So they let him go. His manager had told him where to find him. And then they're excited that they tasked him to be the next Captain America. So now we're 2 days later, and he says, yes, he accepts. And so you can see here when they said that he can be Captain America if he wants, how excited he is. So, all right. And he says, I'd like to make a few requests. You see, I have a manager. And they said, that would be Mr. Thurm, huh? Well, give me the list. We'll see what we can do. And so they give it to him and called him Captain. And he's all excited. And so they're like, most interesting requests here. So Valerie Cooper gives him his uniform, asks her to turn around. John Walker puts on the costume, and there he is. So a very bulky Captain America. So he's like, it's quite snug. So and she said, and he says, don't suppose we can have it modified. It itches having my whole head covered. And they're like, nope. And then there's the shield. And so he's going to train now. This is Freedom Force, who at this time was a government agency. So it's the former Brotherhood of Mutants. So we got the Blob, Pyro, and Avalanche. And so he says, well, I'm the new Captain America, so what do we do first? And so they attack him. Basically, they're going to see what he does. And so I'm not going to read all this because, like I said, there were a lot of words in this issue. So you can see He is now going to attack Blob. Of course, Blob uses his power. He cannot be moved. And so, and Pyro does not make fire, but he can control it. So he has a thing that makes the fire so that he can control it. Avalanche is able to move the planet and or move the Earth. And the new Captain America says, never fought anybody who could do this weird stuff these guys do. What should? I know. And so he throws the shield at Pyro, knock him down, and then when Avalanche does his thing, he jumps and gets him, and now the last one is the Blob. So he's knocked two of them out, and Blob is like, hope you enjoyed your beginner's luck, Boy Scout, because it just ran out. And so we're almost done here. Last 2 pages here. So he punches him with all his strength, and Blob is still there, picks him up, and he's like, oh, he caught me off balance. And Valerie Cooper says, Blob, put him down. Oh, all right, Miss Cooper, he says. He's like, ugh. And you can see they're using to show that he's dazed here. And she asks him if he's okay. And he just says, swell. So she says, did you learn anything from the exercise? Yes, ma'am. That those guys only play for keeps. I was hoping you'd learn what an asset that shield is. And he's like, right. I want you to report to the archive library and start studying the footage we have of the original Captain America in combat. I'll be by to quiz you in 2 hours. He's like, yes, ma'am. So later that night, everybody is playing poker here, and he's shows up, and they're like, I got the job. And he's like, that's great. Did they agree to all our demands? They said they'd look into them. So, and the manager's like, what do you mean look into them? I told you don't do anything without a written contract. He's like, lay off, man. I'm really beat. I need rest. And so he goes, didn't they even let you take home the costume? He goes, not yet. And so 3 days later, he meets with them. And so he says, I wanted to get back to you on your list of requests as soon as possible. Captain, after careful consideration, I must report that we can't grant all of your wishes. In particular, you'll have to drop Mr. Thurm as your manager, and 2 of the 3 men you propose to assist do not meet with FBI approval. Do you have any problems with this? And he ponders for a moment. He says, no, sir. The end. Next, basic training. So, as mentioned, people, this is just perfectly because Mark Gruenwald understands the way humans would behave. This is perfect for understanding human behavior. This particular comic book in particular. So, Captain America 333 by Mark Gruenwald with Tom Morgan penciler. Like and subscribe. I do thank you for listening. Goodbye.